Started with a damn milkshake. Strawberry. Extra thick. No whipped cream, just how Judith liked it since college. I grabbed it from Rizzo's on my way home. A small gesture after another long week. She was pulling late hours again, third time that week. Said her team was prepping for a quarterly review. I didn't question it. Not then. I figured it'd be a nice surprise. Show up, hand her the shake, maybe kiss her on the cheek like we used to before life turned into logistics and schedules. Maybe remind her that we were still us. Her office was dark from the outside, but I knew she sometimes kept the blinds closed. I had a keycard perk of being head of operations, same as my boss, Wes Martin. I didn't knock. I just let myself in and walked toward the corner office. That's when I heard it. Laughter. Low, soft hers. Followed by a man's voice. A chuckle. Then silence. A kind of silence you feel more than hear. I stopped at the edge of the hallway, just before the door. It was cracked open a couple inches. Just enough. She was on the couch. Her head tilted back. Blouse undone. Wes was over her. Shirt untucked. His hand sliding up her thigh. And in that second, I realized two things. I wasn't supposed to see this, and she didn't care if I did. That stung more than the scene itself. I didn't say a word. Didn't push the door open. Didn't slam the shake on the floor or scream or cry like they do in the movies. I just stood there, milkshake sweating in my hand, until I turned and walked back down that hallway like a ghost. By the time I got home, the shake had melted. Judith walked in 20 minutes later, fresh makeup and fake fatigue painted on her face. I was sitting on the couch with SportsCenter on, pretending to watch. She kissed me on the top of the head and said, "I'm sorry it's been such a long week." I said I had a headache. That's all. No accusations. No demands. No scene. She kissed me again, whispered, "Get some sleep," and went upstairs. I sat there in the dark for hours watching the screen flicker. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even think. Just stared. The kind of stare that comes when something inside you snaps. Not like a bone, but like a cable under tension, quietly and permanently. Something in me died that night. And the man who sat there holding that milkshake? He didn't exist anymore. 2 weeks later, she told me about the business trip. "San Diego," she said. 3 days. Just a conference. You know how these things go. I nodded, keeping my voice steady. "You taking Wes with you?" She blinked, just for a second. That's how you know someone's lying. Not in the words, but in the moment their body forgets to act. Then she smiled like nothing was wrong. "Of course not. He's got his own schedule." I kissed her goodbye at the door, told her to text when she landed. She never knew that while she packed her heels and perfume and whatever silk garbage she wore for him, I was already packing up the boys. Will was 10. Robert, 12. I told them it was a surprise vacation, just us guys. Pizza, movies, no bedtime. They cheered like it was Christmas morning. Judith didn't suspect a thing when she left. She kissed them both, told them to be good. I watched her pull out of the driveway with her suitcase in the trunk and her lies folded neatly between her blouses. An hour later, I had the moving van out front. I didn't take everything. Just the boys' stuff, my tools, the safe with our documents, and the little chest of cash I kept for emergencies. Left the furniture, the kitchenware, even my wedding band, dropped it on her nightstand. That same morning, I met with the private investigator. His name was Gil Pearson, retired cop. Quiet, clean, no nonsense. I'd already given him the office key I'd copied after that milkshake night. He didn't ask why. He just did his job. By that afternoon, Gil had what I needed. Surveillance from the airport, credit card records showing a suite booked under a shell name that traced back to Wes's assistant. And, most damning, a full color spread of Wes and Judith entering a spa together, holding hands like teenagers. Meanwhile, I was setting up a new apartment across town. Not fancy, but clean. 2 bedrooms, working AC, and a view of the park. The boys loved it, said it felt like camping. I didn't correct them. I dropped the envelope at the house before Judith returned. Sealed it tight and left it on the dining room table, centered, obvious. No letter yet, just the facts. Photos, timestamps, booking receipts, and a draft divorce agreement drawn up by the lawyer I'd hired the week before. I made sure there was no confrontation, no screaming match, no begging or explaining. Just silence, colder than anything she could respond to. I didn't tell the boys much, just that Mom and Dad were figuring some stuff out, and they'd be staying with me for a while. They asked when they'd see her again. I told them the truth. When she's ready. Judith landed in San Diego thinking she had everything under control. By the time she flew back, she didn't even have a family. I wrote the letter the night before she got back. Not in a rush, not in anger, just clarity. The kind that only comes when the fog lifts, when you finally stop lying to yourself. It wasn't poetic. I didn't try to make her cry. I wasn't looking for revenge or sympathy. I just wanted her to know I saw it all, and that I was done. I started with the milkshake, told her I'd come by the office that night, that I saw everything, every touch, every look, how I turned around, walked away, and didn't say a word. That's when the marriage ended. She just didn't know it yet. Then I laid it all out. I told her how I let her lie to me about San Diego, how I let her think she had me fooled, how I used those days to pack up our sons, build a new home, and collect proof that didn't leave room for denial. I could have forgiven a mistake, I wrote, but not a plan, not a decision. I told her she was free now, free to be with Wes, free to build whatever version of love she thought she wanted. But she'd have to do it without me and without our boys for now. Not because I wanted to punish her, but because they needed stability, not drama. The divorce paperwork was signed and notarized. No alimony, no drawn-out battles. I left the house, the furniture, even the car. All I wanted was my sons and peace. I gave her the lawyer's number, told her if she wanted joint custody, she could fight for it in court. But she'd be up against a stack of evidence, testimony from a private investigator, and the opinion of two kids who didn't understand betrayal, but knew something had changed. The last line of the letter? "You killed what we had, Judith. All I did was bury it." I slipped the letter into the envelope with the rest of the documents and dropped it off at the house on a Tuesday morning. The place felt like a museum, clean, still, lifeless, like no one had lived there in months. I left the key on the table. I walked out the front door without looking back. No parting words, no second chances, no need. She'd read the truth on her own time. The day after she found the letter, Judith called me 12 times. I didn't answer once. There was nothing left to say. Every word she could have used to explain herself died the night I stood outside her office with a milkshake in my hand. She tried showing up at the apartment a week later. Knocked for 10 minutes straight. I sat inside with the boys watching cartoons. Will thought it was the pizza guy. Robert knew better. I let her knock until her hand got tired. Judith unraveled fast. I didn't celebrate it, but I wasn't surprised. She took a leave from work, probably to avoid facing Wes and whatever mess they'd made. A month later, I heard she quit altogether. Word around the office was that Wes had backed off. Said he wasn't ready for anything serious. Hell of a way to find out you were just a distraction. After that, she drifted. She started drinking. I know because Robert told me he saw bottles in her car when she picked them up for weekend visits. Sometimes she didn't show at all. Sometimes she came late, looking worn and hollow. The boys never said it out loud, but I could see it in their eyes. They knew she wasn't the same. I didn't drag her name through the mud. Never told the boys what she did. I let time do that for me. Kids aren't stupid. They figure things out. They watch who shows up, who keeps promises, who disappears. Judith dated a few men, but nothing lasted. She moved apartments, changed jobs a couple times. One of the boys mentioned she tried therapy. That was something, at least. Me? I stayed focused. I worked hard, took on more hours to keep things steady, made it to every parent-teacher meeting, cooked, cleaned, learned how to braid Will's hair when he wanted to try out for a play in middle school. I wasn't perfect, but I was present, and that mattered more than anything. I watched them grow, watched Robert become a leader, quiet but sharp, watched Will bloom into this funny, fearless kid who wasn't afraid to take up space. I gave them structure, rules, and room to screw up, but I never let them forget what love looked like. even if they didn't see it between their parents anymore. There were nights I sat alone in the apartment and wondered if I'd made the right call, if maybe I should have fought harder to keep the marriage. But those thoughts passed like storms, loud, messy, but gone by morning. I didn't need to win. I just needed peace. And I had it. 8 years slipped by like sand through calloused fingers. Robert was in his final year at Harvard. Will, a junior, headed for a full ride if he played the way I knew he could. We'd just gotten the news that his team made regionals. First time in school history. That night, after Will told me, I sat alone at the kitchen table staring at the old team photo on the fridge. Both boys in their uniforms. My boys. My legacy. And out of nowhere, I thought of Judith. I hadn't seen her in person in years. Just a few quick pickups and drop-offs in parking lots. Always civil. Always brief. I knew she was still single. Still lived alone in that same one-bedroom condo near the train station. I picked up the phone and called her. She answered on the second ring. Rick. Her voice sounded smaller. Older. Will made regionals, I said. I was thinking. Maybe the four of us grab dinner before the game. Silence. Then, you sure? No, I said. But it feels right. She agreed. We met at Sullivan's Steakhouse. The same place we used to take the boys when they were little and still thought coloring menus were fine art. This time they came in wearing slacks and dress shirts, men now, not boys. Judith looked good. Time had softened her somehow. She wore the same shade of lipstick she used to when we were young. I noticed. I didn't let it show. Dinner started light. Will joked about his coach's superstitions. Robert shared a story from his last law seminar. We laughed, we ate, and for a moment it almost felt like the family we used to be. After dessert, the boys excused themselves, Robert to take a call, Will to grab mints. That left the two of us at the table. Alone. Judith looked down at her glass. Then up at me. Her eyes were different. Clearer. Like whatever haze she'd lived in had finally burned off. I've missed this, she said quietly. All of it. You. The boys. Us. I didn't speak. I haven't been with anyone in years, she continued. I couldn't. Not after what I did. I went to therapy. Tried to understand myself. Tried to rebuild something out of the mess I made. Still, I said nothing. I still love you, Rick. And there it was. The thing she'd been carrying for nearly a decade. Not hidden. Not forced. Just dropped on the table between us like a flower on a grave. I looked at her. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel warmth either. Just stillness. The boys were still gone, giving us space we didn't ask for but maybe needed. Judith kept her hand around her wine glass, but she wasn't drinking anymore, just tracing the rim with her finger like she was holding onto a thought she hadn't said yet. She cleared her throat. I used to dream you'd come back. That somehow, after everything, we'd sit like this and you'd still see me. I didn't move. She pressed forward. I see you now, what you did for our boys, how strong you stayed. I see it clearer than I ever did back then. I was selfish, Rick. I thought I deserved more. I convinced myself that I was chasing happiness, not destroying it. Her voice cracked. She caught it quickly. I waited for you to call me that first year, every day. And when you didn't, I tried to move on. But it was always you. I stopped dating. I started therapy. I tried to figure out why I threw away the one man who never failed me. She looked up, eyes glassy but not begging. I'm not asking you to take me back. I know I don't deserve that. I want you to know I'm sorry. Truly. I live with it every day. I leaned back, arms crossed, taking her in. She wasn't the same woman who'd laughed with Wes on that office couch. That version of her had been chewed up and spit out by time. What sat in front of me now was someone worn, honest, cracked in the right places. I thought of all the nights I stayed up late helping Will with homework, of Robert's first debate win and the way he hugged me like I was the only man in the world who mattered. I thought of quiet mornings, full coffee mugs, cold dinners, the smell of the boys' laundry, of every sacrifice I made while she disappeared into herself. I finally spoke. I didn't forgive you because you apologized. I forgave you so I could sleep. She nodded slowly, as if she knew that was the best she'd ever get. You were the love of my life, Judith, but that version of me died the night I saw you with Wes. And what grew back? It doesn't love you anymore. It respects what we had. It values what we built. But it doesn't feel the way it used to. She nodded again, slower this time. No tears. No begging. Just quiet grief. I figured, she whispered. I just needed to hear it from you. We sat in silence until the boys returned. Robert slid into his seat and changed the subject without asking questions. Will laughed at something dumb on his phone. The moment passed, folded up and tucked away like an old photo. Judith smiled through it. She was good at that. But behind her eyes, I saw it. She finally understood what real loss feels like. The plates were cleared. The boys were in the parking lot waiting on rideshare apps, and the restaurant had emptied to a quiet hum. Just me and Judith now, the last 2 pages of a book no one had finished reading. She looked down, then up again and slowly, like she was afraid of her own hope, reached across the table and set her hand near mine. Not touching, just close enough to offer something. Her fingers trembled slightly, not from nerves, but from restraint. Like she knew the stakes. Like she knew this moment would either be a new beginning or the last word. I would never do it again, she said, barely above a whisper. I would die before I ever betrayed you like that again. I believed her, not because of the words, but because of the woman sitting across from me. Time had beaten the arrogance out of her. She'd worn her regret long enough for it to wrinkle her soul. I looked at her hand, then at her face, and for a second, just one, I imagined what it might be like to take it, to pretend none of it happened, to go home with her and let nostalgia do what years of silence couldn't. But that second passed. I forgive you, Judith. Her shoulders dropped. A quiet breath escaped her lips, like she'd been holding it for 8 years. But, I said, I don't love you anymore. Her eyes flicked to mine. Hope shattered. It didn't explode. It cracked slowly, painfully, like ice giving way under boots. I placed my hand flat on the table, not touching hers. Just final. There's nothing left. Not anger. Not desire. Just peace. And I won't trade it for the past. She nodded, but it hurt her. That much I saw. Maybe she'd expected me to lash out. Maybe she'd hoped I'd break down, yell, show some sign that a piece of me still belonged to her. But that man was gone. I stood up, slid my jacket over my shoulder, and tossed a couple 20s on the table. Tell the boys good night. She nodded again, lips pressed tight. I walked out without looking back. Outside, the air was cold, crisp, honest, and for the first time since the night of that milkshake, I felt free. Not from her, but from what I used to carry. You don't measure a man by what he survives. You measure him by what he leaves behind. Will got his full ride, played 3 seasons, tore his ACL, and pivoted straight into coaching like he'd planned it all along. Robert graduated top of his class at Harvard Law and opened his own firm back home. He made partner before 35. They turned out better than I could have dreamed. Not perfect, not polished, but honestly, grounded, solid men. And more than once, I saw pieces of myself in them. Not the man who was betrayed, but the man who kept going anyway. We stayed close. Sunday barbecues, weekend ball games, fishing trips to the lake. No holiday passed without them calling or dropping by. They never asked much about the past. But I knew they knew, and they carried the weight of what they'd seen with quiet strength. The way men do when they're raised right. Judith and I didn't speak often, but when we did, it was brief and civil. Coordinating holidays, checking in when the boys were sick, sending birthday texts. The fire was long gone. Nothing left but ashes and shadows. She sold her business 5 years after I handed mine over to Will. Said she was ready to downsize. I didn't ask where the money went. It wasn't my concern. The dog we left behind? Long gone. The house? Sold, remodeled, probably filled with strangers now. Life moved forward. I never remarried. Dated a few times, sure. Even had a woman or two ask me if I'd ever try again. But I always knew the answer before the question finished leaving their lips. My life wasn't broken. It just changed. And somewhere along the way, I realized that the legacy I built wasn't a marriage or a business or a house on a corner lot. It was the boys. It was Will picking up a crying kid on the sidelines and teaching him how to throw a spiral. It was Robert helping a struggling client keep their home instead of selling them out. It was the way both of them looked at me with respect. Not fear, not pity. Just that quiet, wordless pride that passes from one generation to the next like a handshake. That was enough. More than enough. I passed quietly. In my sleep. No struggle. No drama. Just silence. Like the way I walked out that door all those years ago. Will found me the next morning. He had the spare key. Said I looked peaceful, like I just dozed off during a ball game. That made me smile when he told me, wherever I was 62. Didn't feel old, but time doesn't ask for permission. Robert handled the arrangements. Will gave the eulogy. They kept it simple like I'd asked. A few stories. A few tears. A lot of laughter. They buried me in the old plot next to my parents. Small headstone. Just my name, the dates, and one line underneath. He never broke. He just let go. Judith came. I didn't expect her not to. She sat near the back during the service. Quiet, small, like a woman carrying something heavy no one else could see. They said she visits the grave sometimes. Doesn't stay long. Just stand there. Sometimes I talk. Sometimes not. I don't know what she says. Maybe she says sorry. Maybe she tells me she still dreams of the life we lost. Maybe she just sits there with the ghost of what we were. And maybe that's enough for her. I hope she knows this much. What we had was real. It wasn't perfect. It didn't survive. But it mattered. And what we lost, that mattered too. Some things don't come full circle. Some things just end. But if my sons remember me as a man who stood tall, who didn't flinch when the world turned cruel, who raised them with steady hands even when his own heart was broken, then I died exactly the man I wanted to be.